Hey there, Heather Ho, there's Jeff Cutter Diamond welcoming you to yet another Cutter Top 10 video, and we're talking baseball today. From Maine to San Diego. Yeah, right. From Kitchener to Toronto, more like. Of course, rocking the Blue Jays light blue jerseys. And today is going to be the top 10 number one picks. Looking out for number one. Top 10 number one draft picks and all that. There's kind of a draft lottery system. Number one draft picks are not really that big in MLB, well, akin to NBA, NHL, or even NFL. Like the baseball draft is like very like not watchable sometimes. Anyway, we're gonna look at the top 10 number one picks of all time. Here we go. Number 10 is Steven Strasburg of the Washington Nationals, 2009. Steven Strasburg was a very good pitcher from San Diego State, and the Nats, having the worst mark in the National League, got to pick him. So they decided to put their eggs in one basket and pick him up. He went along for a few years. In 2012, Washington was actually criticized by not putting Steven Strasburg on the playoff roster, even though they basically said that they needed Strasburg to rest up because of coming off Tommy John surgery. Strasburg was seen as a good rookie phenom, a good phenom, and nothing else. However, Strasburg would actually produce himself in the 2019 season as Washington made an improbable run to the World Series as they took care of Milwaukee in the one-game playoff, wildcard playoff, then took care of St. Louis and Los Angeles on their way to facing the Astros for the World Series and winning Game 7 in Houston. In the only World Series in history that all 7 games were won by the road team. That's right. Houston had all 4 home games and lost, and Washington lost all 3 of their home games. But Susan Strasburg became the World Series MVP, a 3-time All-Star, and he's a pretty good pitcher. I don't think he pitched for anyone else. Number 9 is David Price, 2007 Tampa Bay Rays. Tampa was desperate and all that. This is not the last time you'll hear the Tampa Bay Rays on this list. Well, Seattle will be mentioned twice too. But anyway, Tampa was still not producing. Like, unlike their expansion cousin Arizona Diamondbacks, who won the World Series in 2001, Tampa just couldn't get out of the last place in their division, except for 2005. But Tampa was the worst AL team. And, Price was huge. A 5-time All-Star and a Cy Young Award winner. Tampa needed a left-handed arm, and he produced. He was great for Tampa, and then in 2014, he was moved to Detroit. And then in 2015, at the trade deadline, the Blue Jays picked him up. Everyone predicted he was going to go from Detroit to Toronto. So he went to Toronto. His first start on Holiday Monday in August, what we call Civic Holiday, he produced against Minnesota. Price was good, but then in the playoff, the problem is in the playoffs when it matters most, he just could not win for shit. Like, he came out of the bullpen, he tried everything in his power, but he couldn't win games. David Price in the regular season by 2015 would have been perfect. If we had regular season David Price, I think the Toronto Blue Jays in 2015 would have went to the World Series. But no, we had playoff David Price. He did win a championship with the Red Sox in 2018 and pitched pretty well. And of course, I'm like, where was this for the Blue Jays? Sorry, but I'm angry. And by the way, this is the only guy who was a former Blue Jay. Number 8 is Josh Hamilton, Tampa Bay 1999. You'd be thinking, hold on, Josh Hamilton didn't play for Tampa. He really played for Texas and Anaheim. I still call him Anaheim, even though the LA Angels of Anaheim. But the question in my mind is, yeah, but he was actually a Tampa Bay draft pick. In 1999, he was this hot shot coming out of high school. Tampa just couldn't believe it. They sucked in their first season, and then their second season in the Major Leagues, they would draft Josh Hamilton. Of course, the draft is in June. The MLB draft is the only one of the 4 major drafts that happens during the season and not after the season. Anyway, Josh Hamilton was big and all that. Unfortunately, he had alcohol problems. He had drug issues, and Tampa tried for like 3 or 4 years to practically make him better, but they failed. He was basically suspended by Major League Baseball for a while, and Hamilton was dumped off by Tampa. Texas took a flyer on him and gave Hamilton a a no cut guarantee as long as he behaved himself. And he did. Hamilton behaved himself. He became a Texas Rangers icon and all that. And, he was the 2010 AL MVP, 5-time All Star. He looked good for Texas and all that. Unfortunately, though, when he was dealt to the Anaheim Angels, well, the Angels, his vices would pick up because, Los Angeles isn't as clean as Arlington, Texas. But yeah, he fell back into drug habits and all that. And basically, his career kind of fishtailed from there. Now, there is another issue with Josh Hamilton is that they said that Hamilton's decline might have also happened when he was a Texas Ranger flipping a ball into the stands for this 39-year-old father by the name of Shannon Stone, but he fell over the railing and crashed 20 feet downwards. I know that highly, but yeah, Josh Hamilton is the key ingredient that a number one draft pick had to fix his problems. Number 7 is Darryl Strawberry, 1980 New York Mets. The Mets were looking good in the 60s and early 70s, and then basically broken apart. Donald Young, the New York City sports writer, basically had some paper articles that basically Tom Seaver's wife basically was yelling at Mets management about her husband. And unfortunately, the Mets management listened to the newspaper article instead of that guy. So, anyway, they traded away Tom Seaver to Cincinnati. But anyway, the Mets went downhill. By 1979, they were a disaster. The Mets they decided to build through the draft. They did draft Dwight Gooden, but they drafted Darryl Strawberry first overall from the Mets, 6'6" powerhouse, and he was an 8-time All Star in the major leagues. He looked pretty good, and the Mets knew they had something good. He would blossom into a good Mets starting hitter in 1986 for the World Series championship team. He would get the Darryl chants. Both for the Red Sox and the Simpsons did that to him. But anyway, Strawberry stayed strong. And remember, he hit a home run that went off the roof of Stade Olympique or Olympic Stadium in 1988. So anyway, yeah, Strawberry did a lot of things. Unfortunately, in New York, the drug culture was just bit him and also Gooden. Strawberry would head to Los Angeles and hopefully be a better player for the LA Dodgers. All that he kind of had a few good seasons, but kind of slumped. And then he went to the Mets, the Yankees, when he was diagnosed with colon cancer and all that. He beat that, and he's still alive. And the Mets and Yankees had a great player. Number 6 is Adrian Gonzalez of the Florida Marlins, 2000. So Aegon also is this big name that actually of the top 5, all of them made their names kind of with the same team that drafted them. But yeah, Adrian Gonzalez was picked first overall by the Marlins in 2000. The Marlins won the World Series in 97, but then sold off their pieces in 98 because the financial problems of buying the World Series, if you will. Take heart, LA Dodgers, even though that the Dodgers have basically tried that. Anyhow, Aegon would be drafted by the Marlins, but soon would be going to San Diego, where he would blossom alongside Texas and Boston in Los Angeles. He was a 5-time All Star, put up 1,200 RBIs, and great player. Number 5 is Joe Mauer, 2001 with the Twins. So the Twins were faltering, so much so that they almost got contracted. Major League Baseball wanted to go down from 30 to 28 teams for 2002. And they were thinking of getting rid of Montreal because the fans just wouldn't come and they just couldn't build a new stadium because of the Quebec finances. Minnesota was also picked to be contracted because, they had some financial problems too. However, contraction didn't happen because the Twins basically threatened to sue and they had right to sue. So that saved them and the Expos for a while. Anyway, Joe Mauer was this catcher in 2001. It's like a catcher first overall? That doesn't seem right. But Maurer would prove everyone wrong. He would be on the cover of MLB The Show a couple times, 6-time All Star, 3-time Gold Glove winner, and 2009 AL MVP. That just goes to prove how good Joe Mauer really was as a catcher and a hitter, if you will. One of the best hitting catchers in MLB history. Number 4 is Harold Baines, 1977 with the White Sox. Everyone agrees that Harold Baines, even though he got 2,900 hits in a 22-year campaign, did not deserve a trip to the Hall of Fame, Baseball Hall of Fame. So, yeah, Harold Baines was drafted first overall by the White Sox in 1977. And he was good for the White Sox. He helped them out in the 80s, become a powerhouse, if you will, for a few seasons. Then he was traded to Texas, and wouldn't you know, the White Sox were so enamored with him, they retired his number 3 while he was still an active player for another team, that being the Texas Rangers. He would play for Baltimore, Cleveland, and a few other teams, I think. But yeah, did Baines deserve to be in the Hall of Fame? No. Did he deserve to have his number retired? Not while he's playing for other teams that could be even better than the White Sox. No. That's weird. Number 3 is A-Rod, 1993 Seattle Mariners. A-Rod was dynamic. The man from Miami, Florida, going through high school and all that. I think he played for the University of Miami, or he was close to. But anyway, yeah, A-Rod was big, and the Mariners needed a shortstop and all that. They didn't really have a good shortstop other than Harold Reynolds, but I think he was second base. Nevertheless, A-Rod would prove to be big for Seattle and all that. Few can remember, or some people will forget, in 95 when the Mariners won that ride to the ALCS, A-Rod was part of the Mariners roster, postseason roster, even though was kind of young. Anyway, A-Rod would produce by 1996, and basically 1998, I think he had a 40-40 season or something like that. But yeah, A-Rod looked pretty good, and the Mariners needed him. Unfortunately, though, money talked, and the Texas Rangers took him in 2001 for a then record $262 million deal. 10 years, $262 million. So they would have to pay $26 million to A-Rod. A-Rod was pretty good. Like, he did win an MVP as a member of Texas Rangers, and memorably struck out when the Mariners got win number 116. But the fact of the matter is that the Rangers were not as good as, and they had to pay a lot of money to A-Rod. So basically, A-Rod could walk. Rumors were circulating of a trade to Boston, probably for Manriam, but that failed because Boston didn't have the money. The Yankees had the money, so they got A-Rod starting in 2004. And A-Rod started out quite well at third base. Well, he was moved to third base because who's shortstop? Derek Jeter. You don't move Derek frickin' Jeter. A-Rod basically got in trouble in 2004, Game 6 against the Red Sox by swatting the ball out of the glove, but they caught it. Nice try. So yeah, A-Rod put up 696 home runs, 3 All-Star MVPs, star-studded career. Unfortunately, though, A-Rod would always be remembered as the guy who was booted for a year plus due to his steroid use. And that's pretty much why he's not in the Hall of Fame. Number 2 is my cousin Tim's favorite player, Chipper Jones, 1990 Atlanta Braves. 1990 Atlanta Braves. So anyway, the 1990 Atlanta Braves would happen, and they were at their wits' end if all that. Atlanta was not really that well. Ted Turner tried his best to steer the ship. Bobby Cox was manager for a little bit. The Braves just couldn't handle it. In 1990, they managed to get the number 1 draft pick. And when Todd Van Poppel and his agent Scott Boras wanted a lot of money, the Braves decided, screw it, we're going to go with Chipper Jones. And it was a right decision. He became an 8-time All-Star, 1999 NL MVP. Ironically, I saw Chipper Jones in that 1999 season. Well, Atlanta came to Toronto for interleague the same day as David Wells' perfect game against the Expos. Yeah, I watched Atlanta, Toronto winning 3-2, and Chipper Jones there, and watching my cousin Tim have the Chipper Jones jersey. It was like, really? Never mind. Anyway, they were the cornerstone of the Braves for 2 decades. He got 2,700 hits, never played for another team. That's how good Chipper Jones is. He never played for another team. You don't see that every day. But yeah, Chipper Jones was big, and he won a ring for the Braves in 1995, contrary to what you think. And number one, by a long shot, from the 1987 draft class from the Seattle Mariners, Ken Griffey Jr. That's right, Ken Griffey Jr., the namesake of a couple of SNES/N64 video games, one of the greatest Seattle Mariners of all time, if not the greatest Seattle Mariner of all time. Center fielder with style, panache, grace, and a great left-handed swing. Griffey has been a Hall of Famer, 13-time All-Star, and over 630 home runs in his career. Griffey saved Seattle. Seattle was floundering like they were terrible in their first decade as a franchise as compared to their expansion cousin Toronto Blue Jays. So factoring that into things, the Mariners were desperate. And they knew that Ken Griffey Sr. was a respected player for the Big Red Machine in the Reds in the 1970s, so they decided to sign him. The Mariners would not live to regret it. Griffey won the 1989 Rookie of the Year. He was basically Seattle's golden ticket to try to be a good franchise and all of that. They even paired Ken Griffey Sr. up with him in 1990. That was nice. So anyway, Griffey was huge. By 1993, he was good because he got 8 straight games with a home run, which is a major league record. In 1994, he was good. 94, he was on pace to smash Roger Maris's home run record at 61 at the time. Well, AL home run record technically too. Yeah, but Griffey was good. 95, he injured himself. Seattle floundered, but when Griffey came back from injury, Seattle picked up the pieces and blew past those pesky California Angels. In the one-game wildcard playoff, they were dead to rights against the New York Yankees. Griffey actually hit 5 home runs in the 5-game series against the Yankees in the ALDS, the first LDS in history. Yeah, Griffey just put up numbers. Now, those 5 home runs were the most in one playoff series, tying the great Reggie Jackson's mark in 1977 World Series. Griffey basically led Seattle past those pesky Yankees. They lost the ALCS to Cleveland, but who cared? Griffey was just pure imagination. 58 home runs in 1997. That was the record till Cal Raleigh just broke it this year in 2025. But Griffey is just big for Seattle. He wanted to go home to Cincy, where he grew up. So the Mariners let him walk to Cincy. I think Brett Boone was sent to the Mariners in that deal, but that worked out. It's kind of funny how Seattle won 116 games in 2001, and they didn't have A-Rod or Griffey on their roster. Well, they picked up Ichiro and Kasasaki, so yeah. But anyway, Griffey would become a big player. He came through with the White Sox in a playoff game against the Twins in 2008, and then he came back to Seattle where it all began. So, look at him. Anyhow, I'm Jeff Diamond. Adieu.